well, let's jump right into it today. I am excited to talk about something today that is actually trending. Stephen Curry, or Steph Curry, and his wife, Aisha, were recently interviewed on Michelle Obama's podcast called the IMO podcast, and they said something that is making headlines. Now, if you don't know sports, like pretty much me, you might not know who Steph Curry is.
I know who Steph Curry is.
I know you do. So he's an American professional basketball player in the NBA and regarded as the greatest shooter in basketball history. And since I don't really follow sports all that closely, I had to ask our 17-year-old son to tell me about who Steph Curry is. And so just a little bit about him. Steph Curry was pretty off the radar for basketball when he was in high school. In fact, in high school, he was a wiry 6-footer who didn't receive any major college scholarship offers at all. And he ended up at a small college, Davidson College, which has only, I think, 2,000 students.
Yeah, small school.
But there he started to make his mark very quickly. And by his sophomore year, he was well known for his signature shot. And his signature shot was a 3-pointer that was well beyond the line, not just right at the line, but sometimes from middle of court.
Dropping bombs from the 3-point line.
Yep. And in 2009, when he was only 6'2", that's one thing our son said, he's my height, Mom. He was picked as 7th overall by the Golden State Warriors in the NBA draft.
Safe to say he's made a difference for that team.
And my son said to me, Mom, you know what? He isn't one of the best shooters of all time. He is the best shooter of all time. And I asked him why, what makes him the best shooter? And he said, because he changed the game. He changed the game of basketball by the sheer volume of 3-point shots that he takes. And he is just so fast too, that he is nearly indefensible.
Yeah. And so what does Steph Curry have to do with marriage? Well, for starter, he's been married to his high school sweetheart, which I think is really cute. His high school sweetheart, Aisha, for nearly 15 years, and they have 4 kids together. And from the outside, seems like it's a pretty good marriage as well. And on the IMO podcast, they opened up about their personal lives, you know, how they met, the early years, what it was like raising 4 kids while living in the public eye, and what keeps their relationship strong. It was a really cute interview, and it'd be great to go and see it.
And one thing in particular that Steph said about marriage is backed by a slew of experts, from couples therapists down to divorce lawyers. And it really encapsulates so much wisdom in just a few simple words. And what he said is, we don't run away from tension on the daily. We don't run away from tension on the daily.
I like that. And that line really hit us, especially in the business and the world that we're in. It's a very simple idea, but radical for most couples. Many people refuse to accept the idea that discomfort is worth actually embracing. You know, we recently watched the first season of this show called You on Netflix, and it's got 5 seasons, but I don't think that we fell in love with it.
We didn't. I don't think we're making it past season 1. Yeah. It was a little mediocre.
Yeah. But there's something in season 1. There's a scene where Beck turns to Joe in a moment of tension, and she says, like, can't we just go back to keeping secrets from each other and not talk about anything difficult for the rest of the night? And even though this is just a movie, that scene really just sort of captures exactly how many relationships handle discomfort when it comes up. We sweep it, we avoid it, we sweep it under the rug. We chase this fantasy that our relationship should just be in this constant, effortless harmony and bliss. And if they're not, then, well, something is clearly broken in this relationship.
So today we're unpacking why Steph's advice is so spot on, what the research from experts like John Gottman and Julie Gottman and Terry Real tells us, why people still push back against this idea. We're actually going to share some real comments with you today from people about this issue. And most importantly, we're going to leave you with some practical ways that you can start leaning into healthy tension in your own marriage. Because again, as we've said many times, tension isn't the enemy.
Yeah.
Conflict isn't the enemy. It's actually one of the most powerful tools that the two of you have for growing closer together.
Yeah, let that sink in. Tension and conflict are tools that grow your relationship up.
Yeah. But we really resist that idea.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about conflict on this podcast, and it bears repeating. People don't want to believe that tension is necessary and valuable. But as Steph and Aisha model in the podcast, and as science confirms, The strongest marriages lean into discomfort rather than run away from it.
So let's talk more about the Curry interview for just a minute. So Steph and Aisha emphasize that marriage isn't about perfection or even having all the answers. It's about continuing to learn about each other through every season that you go through. They kept in the podcast coming back to this idea that it's just us and choosing each other again and again, even in the daily friction, or maybe especially in the daily friction.
Yeah. And in the high pressure world that they live in, he's a professional basketball player and well known. There's fame, there's travel. He's had injuries. They're raising a family. Tension is going to be inevitable. But instead of letting this tension build into resentment and pretending it's not there, they face it together. And that is where the real wisdom lies in that comment.
Yeah, I don't think he probably realized in that just quick little comment that was the best part of the whole interview to me. I mean, other than just kind of how cute they relate to each other.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest takeaway for me from that whole interview was just that they lean in. They don't run away from tension on the daily, is how he put it. And, this isn't just some celebrity insight.
It's good insight, though.
It is a good insight.
Yeah.
But it's backed also by decades of research. So psychologists, researchers, even divorce lawyers, they all agree the key isn't avoiding conflict, but how we engage with it and how we engage with it in a constructive manner.
I like that, engaging conflict constructively. This is where John Gottman's research is foundational. After studying thousands of couples, he found that 69% of problems in relationships were perpetual.
So I think you need to define perpetual for us.
That means that these problems are going to just keep coming up time and time again. And this was a longitudinal study where he had studied these couples and he had them come back in 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 years through all stages of life. And he had them address a couple of things. But one of the things he noticed was that they addressed the same problem year after year after year.
Yeah.
So that's where he comes up with this concept of perpetual conflict.
So, and people have different perpetual problems too, right? Like some couples will fight perpetually about parenting, but another couple might not fight about parenting. They might have a perpetual conflict around money, for example, right?
And everybody's different, but they're going to have these same perpetual conflicts. And the problem is that these conflicts stem from fundamental differences in their personality, their needs, maybe their values, and they never fully go away. So what he found was happy couples don't eliminate conflict. In fact, they don't even reduce it. They just learn to manage it through productive dialogue and respect.
So the Gottmans have a book out called Fight Right. And in that book, the Gottmans explain that conflict actually serves a really valuable purpose. It actually creates opportunities for us for empathy, for mutual understanding, for deepening our love for one another. And we do these things because of tension. If we were in a state of never-ending bliss and harmony and all of that, we would not have these opportunities for the tension to develop us and to deepen our love for one another. And successful couples, the Gottmans call them the masters. There's one significant thing that I think is super important as we talk about this thing of tension today. And that is that the masters maintained at least a 5-to-1 ratio of positivity to negativity during conflict, during disagreement. So I want you to think about that. 5 positive to 1 negative. Now, what did the disasters do? The disasters, the ones that were heading for a divorce or living miserably with each other, their ratio was very different. They had a ratio of 0.8 to 1. So 0.8 positive to 1 negative. In other words, the disasters had less positive than they did negative. Now, here's why this matters so much, because I think in the early days, it didn't really feel like it's such a big deal that we had this little blow up. There was a lot of negativity in it. But I want you to imagine a typical week where maybe you have, let's say on average, and I don't know what the average is, but let's say a couple has one solid disagreement a week. Okay.
I agree with that.
Probably one or
maybe
two
I should disagree
or more.
so that we can have our one for the week.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But during that conversation, let's say you take 3 snarky jabs or make 3 little criticisms or have 3 little defensive moments in that one conflict that you're having. Okay. Now, for the masters of marriage, what they would be doing is they would be balancing out those 3 negatives with 15 positives, because
Wow.
remember, it's a 5-to-1 ratio.
5-to-1 in disagreements, right?
Just during disagreements.
Yeah.
So what would those little 15 positives look like? Well, it might be like, oh, a repair. I'm sorry. You know what? That came out bad. Let me try that again. Or it might be infusing a little humor, or it could be a gentle touch of the hand, or some agreement or accepting influence. Like, you know what? I see your point there. Whereas the disasters, they would only have maybe 2 positives to return for those 3 jabs. That's a big difference.
That is. And I want to just kind of go back to one of my favorite repair attempts, which I really, as we've delved into this work, as we've studied from both Terry Real and the Gottmans, I really never really thought that repairs like, oh, let me try that again would work. I thought that was lame. Like, you're not going to give me a redo when I was just being an absolute jerk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yet it actually works really well. Mm-hmm. If you can just say, like, hang on, that was, I was in my child brain and that just came out wrong. Let me try that again. And you say it nice. Sharla has been very kind to let me redo lots of conversations.
Yeah. It's amazing how much it works when we do it quickly and take accountability quickly and make those little repairs early. But again, I want to come back to this. If there was 3 snarky jabs in a conflict discussion, the masters would make 15 positive interactions to compensate for them, whereas the disasters would be making maybe only 2 positives.
Ooh. That's leaving your bank account negative.
It does over and over and over.
Yeah, and that adds up. Now, let's extrapolate this to over the year. So 52 disagreements, that's 1 per week. Masters rack up about 156 negatives, but over 780 positives in those conflict moments. But for the disasters, those same 156 negatives only have 124 positives. This gap is massive. And remember, this is only during conflict. So outside of arguments, the healthy ratio is even higher. It's like a 20-to-1 in every reaction.
So think about that. Over time, if you extrapolate that, like you said, over the course of a year, that debt really starts to compound.
Yeah, you're upside down when it comes to that. 124 positive, 176 negatives.
Yeah.
You're not happy. And over 5 or 10 years, the compounding effect becomes enormous. So early on, maybe these negatives, these little jabs, this inequality of positive and negative doesn't really seem hurtful or harmful. You're still in love and the good things sort of outweigh the bad and you brush it off. But slowly those unaddressed or poorly repaired negatives start to shift your sentiment override or your perception of your partner.
Yeah.
And you begin seeing your partner through this negative lens instead of a lens of goodwill. And what I mean by that is you can't find anything good about what they're doing or what they're saying. And they call that negative sentiment override.
You just assume the worst.
Yeah. Instead of assuming the best, you're assuming the worst.
Yeah.
And all of these small just cuts, I call it death by 1,000 cuts, they just begin to accumulate. And then one day you wake up feeling like the love is just gone. Very slowly, it started to ebb away. And then, all at once, it's just gone. And that's how it works. We fall out of love very slowly and then all at once. And that's why leaning into tension with skill isn't optional. It's what protects the long-term health of your marriage and your relationship.
So true. Now, think about it like, I think about it like Steph Curry on the court. If we go back to this same metaphor, he didn't, like my son said, he changed the game of basketball, Mom. He didn't change the game by taking fewer shots. He changed the game by taking way more 3-pointers than anyone thought was reasonable or a good idea. And he just got really good at becoming super accurate with them. And in marriage, we don't want to try to decrease the volume of tension or the volume of conflict that we face, because that would be completely unrealistic. So instead, like Steph, we learn to handle a higher volume of shots, i.e. conflict, while dramatically improving our positive to negative ratio, right? That's how we change the game of marriage, the way that he changed the game of basketball, by taking more shots, more volume of conflict, but getting much better at that ratio, that 5-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. I mean, more volume of conflict, if you're doing it right, means more volume of positive comments, positive repairs.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as we always say, marriage is a refining process. It's two imperfect people. And I know there's those times when we're like, man, I really didn't get this person that I really deserved. And I hate to break it to you, but this person that you've chosen is just as imperfect as you are. And I am just as imperfect as he is. And it's just two imperfect people who are building a life together. And that will always create friction. But when we have the skill set and we treat these moments of friction with care, and we develop the skills to manage them, that friction is actually what sharpens us. It's because it exposes our patterns, our wounds, our inner adaptive child, and it points to us where it is that we need to grow up. But if we run away from it and we run away from that tension, it's essentially saying, I'm refusing to do the grown-up work, the real work that it takes to develop a mature relationship.
Yeah. I saw somebody wore a t-shirt today and it said, iron sharpens iron.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
We need both sides in order to make that work. Okay. Let's talk about why this advice is so hard for many people to accept. In a Medium article by Jessica Stillman summarizing the Steph Curry interview and his advice to lean into the tension, the comment section was off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Even though her article provides and backs up tons of research to support the value of conflict, the comments were, as you said, all over the place.
Yeah.
One reader said, quote, I'm not sure I agree with much of this article, though I do agree that learning to fight better is helpful, but deciding not to fight is a good solution as well. Taming the tongue is also a marriage enhancer.
So I love that comment.
Both. Like I can go on both sides.
And there was a lot of comments like that. It was about 50-50 people that disagree with this concept versus agree with this concept. But so in that comment, what was that commenter missing? What they're basically doing is they're still arguing that not fighting is sometimes a better option. And I obviously have to mind read here because I don't know the commenter or what they were thinking, but it seems as though they think that conflict is always negative, that there isn't this possibility of having a 5-to-1 ratio of positivity to negativity during conflict, because what he's suggesting with taming the tongue is exactly what positive conflict actually would be. It would be all about respect and without losing strategies and with positivity.
So we have a set of good friends who have probably one of the most solid marriage relationships that we've ever come across. And they never seem to disagree. And they both had these, I want to say, magical, parents growing up, and they both talked about how their parents just loved each other, about how they never saw them fight. And so I want to just add that because I think some people think that's the way it's supposed to be. And it can be. It's not that their parents never fought or never disagreed. They just never let it get very contested. And they probably were experts at managing the positive to negative. So the only thing their children saw was positive input with a little bit of negative input, but they saw so much positive that it just erased it away.
Well, and also with
and you know who I'm talking about.
I do. And with that same friend that you're talking about, once we kind of even described what conflict was as we define it, they were like, oh, well, we disagree on things. We just don't do that other thing of, fighting nasty. Like, well, that's still conflict. Yeah. It's just positive conflict.
Yeah. And it just means they're masters at it. They're really good at doing conflict.
Yes.
Which sometimes people say, what is it you guys do? I'm like, we teach people how to have better conflict.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get practical because that's what you're here for, some practical stuff. So how do we actually lean into this tension in our daily lives?
Well, I think the first step is we have to think about what we believe and what is our mindset around this tension and around conflict. Because if we continue to see all conflict as negative, or if we think, oh no, we're fighting, we can't be fighting. If we're fighting, that means we're failing. If we have some of these beliefs, then guess what? It would be natural to want to run away from conflict, to run away from tension. So instead, I think it's super important to change our mindset about conflict and tension and change how we think about it. So if I could suggest, maybe we reframe in our mind when the tension arises and you're starting to feel it. Maybe we say inside or even outside, you know what? This tension isn't something to avoid. This is an invitation. This is an invitation to understand each other better, to have more empathy, to have more respect, and to develop some skills. And then show up and do that with respect, show up with kindness, show up and work it and create that 5-to-1 ratio of positivity to negativity, even during conflict.
And whenever something comes up, whether, it's money, there's a lot of stuff that comes up, parenting, chores, or even bigger values. Just want you to pause for a second, take a breath, get into your wise brain, and then see if you can get underneath and dig into the bigger dream or need that exists in your partner's position. We're never really fighting about the thing that we think we're fighting about. We're usually fighting about some core value or dream or need that lies below the surface. And if we can stay calm and curious enough to expose our dreams and needs to one another, often we can find a win-win solution that honors both people.
There's a story that John Gottman tells that we've shared before, but it's been a long time since we've shared it here on the podcast. So I want to try to see if I can remember it. But
the sailing story?
Yeah. So there's a story about this couple. They were coming into the Gottmans for therapy and they were entering into retirement and realized, holy crap, we have this massive difference of ideas in how we see retirement. Robert and I, this is kind of fun because we're starting to have some of those conversations as we look at the next 10 years.
So she wanted to go home to the family farm in Iowa. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or somewhere.
Yep. And live on 20 acres.
Yeah. And he wanted to sail the ocean blue.
He wanted to sell everything, all their belongings, get a boat and sail around the Caribbean or something.
Yeah. Something like that. He wanted to live on a sailboat, which sounds fun.
We couldn't have two more disparate, ideas of what retirement should look like, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, of course, they're fighting about, I don't want that. Well, I don't want to be milking cows and taking care of 20 acres. Well, I don't want to sell all of our things and live on a boat and not see my grandkids.
Yeah. And they're just, if you're watching this on anything visual, YouTube, so they're just butting heads. So we always use the two fists, but they're not opening up the fist to see what the real core value or need is on the inside. We call that the dreams within the conflict.
Right. So what Robert just described is, can you get to those core values and needs and dreams? They weren't really fighting about a sailboat and a farm.
No.
They were fighting about certain values that they each held deeply. And when it's a value and something you hold deeply, you will sometimes fight to the death for it. There has been times early in our marriage when I'm like, I'm willing to go the distance.
We're going to the mat on this one.
We are, because this is something so important to me. So now if you think about that, what do you think was important to him about sailing the ocean blue? What do you think his values or dreams were behind it?
I think it was freedom, and it's probably this thing he's always just had.
Freedom.
This underlying, I'm just going to go live on a sailboat.
Freedom, adventure, fun, carefree. I can picture all of these values that would be so important to him. He's probably worked his whole life and he just wants to be free of stress and free of work. He just wants to be free. And then on her side, what would be some values of wanting to live on this family farm with acres?
I mean, family, hard work, sort of getting back to her roots, the way she grew up. She wanted to share that. Yep. She might have been an idyllic life for her.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sustainability could have been something. Yeah. So there were things that were deeply held by each of them. So how did they resolve this?
I know, that's a tough one, right?
Sometimes it seems like there's no middle ground here, but there was.
The key was for them in this story, and that's why we're illustrating it, is that they found the middle ground in what they wanted to do. So I think what they did was they sold everything, and they decided, we're going to sail for a year. We're going to take the sailboat out and we're going to sail for a year. And then we're going to come back and we're going to live on the family farm for a year. And then after that time, we're going to decide which of these two lifestyles or life experiences suits us best and is best for us in our relationship.
And what we want to do next. So here was the key when they started looking at, okay, how do we create a win-win and accomplish something that works for both of us? We'll do a year of each, and then we'll renegotiate.
Yeah,
we will come
revisit it.
back. We'll
Yeah.
revisit this whole topic because maybe they find out they don't really want to do either of those things. And they want to do a third option altogether. And this is key when it comes to conflict. And I think why we get so entrenched in our position is we think that any compromise or any resolution that we come up with has to be final. And I remember talking to this couple one time, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, you just blew my mind. It never occurred to me that something could be temporary, that a solution could be for 6 months or a year or 2 years. I just never wanted to give in or compromise because I thought it was forever."
Yeah. It's an interesting way to look at it. Like, you don't have to make a forever decision.
Yep.
Especially when you're talking about compromises. Let's try it your way for a little bit.
Right. So as we put this idea of embracing tension into practical use, think about what Robert said with what are the dreams and values that are beneath the position, because you're never fighting about what you're really fighting about. Can I get curious enough to really dig into what is important to Robert? Can he get curious about what is important to me? And can we have a dialogue that comes up with at least a temporary solution for now? And then, yeah, we can revisit it again later if we need to.
Yeah.
So one more thing besides this idea of, looking at what's behind it is that make sure that when you are starting to dive into tension and opening up something that is prone to conflict, the way you start that conversation, the first 3 minutes of how you start that conflict matters the most.
Yeah. I like to say that if you're coming in hot, that's pretty much how the whole conversation is going to go.
Yeah. And research backs that up. Research shows that about 95% of the time or more, a conversation that starts harsh never recovers. It just continues to escalate. And the masters really do model this for us in a very different way. They start their conversations, their conflict conversations, in a way that's gentle, that's soft, still firm. They still can express their needs. They can still be honest, but not threatening. They can still be kind. There's not accusations and criticisms and blame. And if they do start to go off the rails a little bit, they're quick to repair. Sometimes the masters even will repair 2 or 3 times in those first 3 minutes. So, again, as you're embracing, I think this is another huge takeaway from today that you can implement right away, is to start managing the first 3 minutes of your conflict. And if you can nail the first 3 minutes with a soft startup, you are far more likely to have a productive, successful conversation.
Instead of one that just comes in hot and blows up.
Yep.
All right. So there's a few common pitfalls that we want you to watch out for as you begin to lean into tension and learn how to lean into tension. First, watch out for absolute conflict avoidance, i.e., I don't want to have conflict. I'm just running away from it, because this eventually increases resentment, emotional distance as time goes on.
Yep.
And also watch out for escalating any of the losing strategies that we've talked about in our past podcasts. Go back to our recent series.
So we have a challenge for you this week. Next time you start to feel that tension rising, I just want you to name it. Name it gently, instead of maybe your old automatic reaction, which could have been in the past shutting down or instantly exploding. And I want you to just say something to your partner. Say it out loud. You could just say, "You know what? I'm noticing some tension here, and I want us to lean into it together. So help me understand what's going on for you. What's important to you? What are your core values around this?" And then listen openly and non-judgmentally, and make a repair. If things start to go off the rails really quick, like we said at the beginning, "Hey, I blew that. Let me try that again." And as Robert said, that it's amazing how well that works.
Yeah.
So just notice how it feels to stay in the tension rather than to run away from that tension. And as you do, pay attention to what starts to shift for you and shift for your relationship.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, a lot of people are looking for even more support beyond the podcast. Some reach out to us for private coaching, but many want a structured program with some clear tools with ongoing access. We're in the middle of an early stages of creating something that's just like that. And we really would like your insights to help shape it so that it's something that serves the community well.
Yeah, basically, we are asking for your help. So if you've ever felt like you can be successful in life or in your career or out in the world, but you still are struggling and wondering, why can't I be successful at home? then I would actually love to personally talk to you. This is purely for research purposes. There's no sales pitch involved. We're just developing something, and your experiences could truly help us to build something that is transformative for couples. So if you're interested in letting us interview you, we would love for you to schedule through the link that's going to be in the show notes, and we can have a chat and you can be part of the development of this new program that we're creating for couples.
Thank you so much for listening to Master Your Marriage today. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and check the show notes for the links to the IMO podcast. The articles we mentioned and other resources can be found in the show notes.
Remember, be kind to each other this week. Put each other first. It is the small things done often that create the biggest impact.
Until next time.